Hello, welcome to the Positive Posting Conversation, the show about how to have a better relationship with your dog and cat. I'm Zazie Todd, author of the books Wag and Purr and creator of Companion Animal Psychology blog. My co-host Kristi Benson is a dog trainer and anthropologist, and she also works for the Academy for Dog Trainers. We don't give advice on your pet, so if you have concerns, see your veterinarian, dog trainer or cat behaviourist as appropriate. Thanks for joining us today. In episode 1, we chat about genius dogs who know lots of words, Stella the dog who was taught to use buttons to talk, and the words and behaviours our dogs and cats know or ought to know. We get to know my co-host Kristi better by learning about her courses for dogs who jump or need house training. At the end, we discuss the books we're reading. Hi everyone, I'm Zazie Todd and I'm here today with my friend and colleague Kristi Benson, who you all know as special correspondent to both the Positive Post and Companion Animal Psychology, but she also is a dog trainer and she works for the Academy for Dog Trainers as well and has some other work too. She's got a very interesting career, including anthropology as well. So thank you, Kristi, for joining us. And how are you today?
I'm doing good. It's sunny here finally after weeks of rain, so enjoying that.
Yeah, excellent. Well, we have endless rain again. It just keeps on happening because it's that time of year and that's what it's like in this part of BC, I guess. Yeah, I'm English, so I don't really mind the rain too much. It rains a lot in England too.
Oh, I'm a prairie girl and I hate rain. So I'm trying to come up with like strategies to not just become really like depressed or
Yeah, I have to say some days it is very dark when it's rainy, but I guess for you it will switch to snow and sun for part of the winter anyway. So
it was actually snowing this morning.
Wow, really? Is that the first snow?
I was in town this morning, so about a 45-minute drive, and I don't think it snowed at home, but it was the second time it snowed there in Smithers. So
cool. I am waiting for snow because I want to know if Pepper likes the snow, but he really hates the rain. So I have no idea what he's going to think of the snow. And he's quite small and he's very low to the ground. So it's quite possible that he'll hate snow too.
He'll need a little pepper coat.
Yes, he has a coat. That's cute. Good thing about little dogs, I'm discovering coats and things. Coats and sweaters, which are very helpful. Anyway, I was going to say something about the Genius Dog Challenge because I've written a couple of things about that recently. There was something in the Positive Post and also something in Companion Animal Psychology about this piece of research that's coming out of Hungary. And I think it's really interesting to think about what kinds of language dogs can understand. So I don't know if you've seen it, but
I did watch the video that you sent.
Yes. So there's a really nice YouTube video that says something about what the Genius Dog Challenge is. And I'll put that in the show notes to go with this. And for one of the studies they did, they started with some pet dogs. I think they had 34 pet dogs and they gave them 3 months to try and learn 2 new words for toys and to know them accurately. And I don't know what this would be like if you did this with your dogs. I can guess with Pepper, but only one of the dogs in this study was actually able to learn these 2 new toy names by the end of the 3 months.
I don't know. I think maybe I would be surprised, but I think Soleil, who's our spaniel herding dog type, she would learn 2 in 3 months. I don't think if we made the attempt, and if the way they had it set up was a way that was actually based on how dogs learn, rather than just see if you can, teach your dog. I guess it would depend probably on the methodology. Our other dogs, I don't know. I don't know if toys don't motivate. I was looking at that and I was like, okay, these dogs are obviously motivated by toys. So they're finding it just naturally fun. But if I took Sitka, who really doesn't care about toys at all and was like, toy, 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 she would just be like, so I don't know if she would not be able to learn 2 words, but she certainly would not be motivated without other reinforcement to bother learning.
Yeah. And so Soleil is part herding dog. And I think that's kind of relevant because they also tested 6 border collies who they already knew lots of words. And so they'd already learned lots of words. You can guess that they were able to learn the names of 2 toys in 3 months. And so then they did a further study with these 6, I think it's the same 6 border collies. and they wanted them to learn, I think they had 6 toy names in a week. And so they qualified to take part in the study because they already knew the names of 28 toys, which is quite a lot of toys to know the
It
names
is
of.
a lot. It is a lot.
And when they say they know them, they mean that they can be asked to go get it by their guardian in one room, and then they rush into another room and pick the correct toy out from a pile of toys, and then rush back to the room again. So I think that's really impressive. And they tested them six names, I think it was, in a week, and then another 12 names in the next period of time, and most of them got it within this time. So they were really quick at learning the toys' names, which I think is amazing.
Totally.
Yeah, and it reminds me of Chaser. I think I've got Chaser's book behind me on my shelves back there. So Chaser was the dog who learned over 1,000 toy names, I think. It's just incredible to think that some dogs can do this. And it's not just border collies, because they did have some dogs that aren't border collies that they've trained, which is pretty amazing too. I do not think Pepper could learn to do this. So Pepper is my Shih Tzu. He's a senior Shih Tzu.
There's Sitka there.
Hey,
you
Sitka.
Behind me.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
Sitka doesn't know we're discussing cognitive abilities of dogs.
She's like, I'm smart. I lay around a lot.
Well, I think if you are a dog that is smart, that is definitely a smart thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, in this study, they were obviously dogs that were interested in play, like you say. And one of the ways they taught it was encouraging people to play with the dog and to keep on naming the toy. And they kind of picked it up from that. So it's a bit different from the way that we teach behaviours to dogs, when, different type of learning. So yeah, I think you're right. They had to be play motivated to want to.
And not just play, like Sitka will play for hours with another dog. Like she really enjoys that. But she doesn't play with items. That doesn't, ring her bell, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess every dog is different in terms of how they like to play, but there are some dogs who we would call them drivey dogs, who are really keen on chasing, fetching, that kind of thing with the toys.
Yeah. It was fascinating to watch that video and just see the dog go and be like, where's item Z, and pick it up. And then, I mean, like I said, I think Soleil would probably be reasonable at this, but all of my other dogs, Huskies, just wouldn't. This isn't within their sort of. I don't want to make it sound like I think my dogs are dumb, because I don't. I think they have their own special, brainiac ways. But
absolutely.
So yeah, it's really neat to watch them go and pick up an item when it's been given a name.
Yeah, I think so. When we had Bodger, we used to play that game with him, and he knew the names of, I think, 5 or 6 toys, and we were trying to teach him more. But by the time he became not very well, then he wasn't so, he still loved to play it, but he wasn't so good at learning new names. He wasn't as sharp as he had been. So I don't know if he could have done this if we'd had him for longer. I don't know. Dogs get taken too soon, sadly. But I found it really interesting because for the book club last month, we read, I'm going to make that show, How Stella Learned to Talk, which is also about talking dogs, but it's a completely different approach. And we've got a video about that I'm going to put in the show notes for this as well, that shows Stella learning to do things. Because her guardian, Christina Hunger, is a speech pathologist who spends her working life working with kids and teaching them how to use devices with lots of buttons to press to communicate with. You press the button and it says a word or a phrase. So she wondered if she could do this with her puppy, and she started with Stella as a puppy, and she got a button. And I think outside was the first thing that she taught. And every time she was going to go outside, she would press the button and model pressing the button. And she kept on doing this until Stella got it. And I don't know if you had a chance to look at that video, but that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I got that. To me is like a similar method about how some of my clients ask, I want my dog to ring a bell to go outside when they need to go to the bathroom. And I admit, I know some trainers really like to appreciate that, but I admit I just pick up the paw, bonk the bell, let the dog out, and eventually they seem to put it together. I think there's the behavior and the reinforcement are, are obvious enough to the dog that they start to ring the bell typically.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people like to train their dog to ring a bell before they go out. So it makes sense to have started with that. And then over time, I mean, it took a while for Stella to get the hang of it, but once she got the hang of it, she learned more words, and now they have this massive. I think in the video it's like 48 different buttons or something, and that's interesting. Though, what's interesting to me is that the Genius Dog Challenge is starting with the names of toys, whereas because of the work that she does, Christina Hunger took a different approach with Stella, and she started mainly with action words, verbs like outside or play or eat or something like that. But there are some object names and things in there as well, I think. So I found that interesting to see different types of words being used. I think she's started something where lots of people are going to be trying to teach their dog or their cat to press a button that says a word like, but if my cat had a button that said eat, Harley, I think he would just go and he would be forever pressing this button, eat, all day long.
Yeah.
Because he really likes his food and he likes to eat. So I would be having to say, no eat yet. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I think some of my dogs, if there was an eat button, like Misha he would like live on that button. He would like, there would be like zero downtime between him pressing that button. But all the other stuff, I think it's interesting that dog, anyway, from the video, I didn't read the book, had an opportunity. So instead of it being like, which particular object, which you enjoy, are you going to, the reinforcement will be from playing with the object, or I saw they were getting food, or, picking the object up. But this was like, here's an opportunity for you to decide which particular reinforcement you want at this moment, or reinforcement's always available if you go and press this button. Because it seems to me a lot of it was stuff that the dog would enjoy.
Yeah, things that the dog would like to do. And no food was used in teaching the dog to use these buttons. But like if the dog wants to go outside and they manage to say outside and they get taken outside, that's, they're succeeding in communicating what they want and getting what they want. So I think that's nice. And I kind of like that approach of thinking about what dogs want and need anyway, or cats. So I think that's what's nice about this approach, is it gives the dog a chance to say what they actually want. And actually that reminds me of a piece of research from a few years ago in which horses were taught how to say whether or not they wanted a blanket put on them. And I think that was really, really cool. Very nice.
I saw it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess as a dog trainer, I think I sort of felt kind of like rend in two really different feels about when I see the button stuff, because I think number one, it's neat to see that dogs can learn to access things that they want by, moving their bodies and, do this behavior and you'll get X, Y, Z. And it's nice that we as humans are like, how can we meet our dogs' needs? What do our dogs really want? And how can we sort of access that part of their brains? But then another part of me is like, is this really language? And why do we always want to shove dogs into a little tiny, but look, they're just like humans sort of box, And then also, what if like that dog looked to me to be, and maybe the breed, like a herding pity type dog.
I'm not sure exactly what breed.
What if my dogs don't learn to press buttons that's not necessarily the easiest behavior. So what if I have a dog who doesn't do well, and the dog's then having to discriminate against a whole bunch of things that look exactly the same. And, so I'm like, okay, so then we're training dogs to press buttons with their paws, which isn't really naturally a dog thing. It's not a dog thing. Dogs use their paws for lots of stuff. So I guess part of me is worried that we're kind of like, why are we trying to make dogs be more like us? And then part of me is like, it's so neat to see the dogs learn this, and it's neat to learn more about how dogs think. And it's, so I guess I'm sort of ripped in two. We can also, if we don't want to teach our dogs to press buttons, we can still meet our dogs' needs, like my dogs have a dog door, so they don't have to press a button. They can just go outside,
Yeah, absolutely.
I sort of feel a little bit like this isn't required for you to have a good relationship and understand your dog's needs, but it's also kind of fun and cool. And if you want to do it, like do it. I mean, doing a bunch of fun training with your dog is hilarious. And so absolutely.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you, actually. I mean, we should appreciate dogs for who they are, and we can meet their needs without that. And for example, I have never taught Pepper or any of my previous dogs to ring a bell or press a button to go outside. But I kind of learned to recognize when they needed to go outside, if they so they wouldn't get caught short, and also the times of day when they would normally like to go outside anyway. So you can still have that you can provide those things for your dog anyhow.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
I actually did teach one of our dogs to ring a bell, and then we regretted it so deeply that we ended up not having a bell left out, just because we expected she'd ring a bell when she needed to go to the bathroom. This was before as a dog trainer, but of course she just started ringing the bell whenever she felt like going outside, which might be for literally 8 seconds, and then she'd be like, and I want back in now. So I love it, and I feel very blessed that we are able to live in an environment where we have a dog door now, just to see how much the dogs actually do go in and out, that they can relieve themselves, especially as they're getting older now, but they have access and control over their environment like that, and it's nice. Not everybody does, but it's nice when you can give that to them.
Yeah, I agree. That's a really nice thing to be able to provide, and not everyone has that option, but giving dogs choices is always a good thing. Yeah. So how many words do you think any of your dogs know?
Not many. So I think my dogs, I would like to say that they all know their own names, but I honestly, I mean, it would be an interesting research project to see if I'm actually right about that. Like, Timber. Okay, so she didn't react. Sits. Sitka.
She's sleepy though. I mean, she's busy.
She's got her little. She's a good girl. Yeah, so I think they mostly know their names. Usually she would start wagging if I said her name. And then they know when we're outside, they know pretty much any verb. I do use come, but anytime I yell anything, any dog's name, any word outside, it's a recall cue. So
yeah, well, that's an important thing.
I don't know.
That's an important thing. So Pepper knows his name. He's learned come here. I've been working on that because he didn't have any. I mean, he's never off leash outside. I wouldn't feel safe letting him off leash because he's only tiny, and there are cougars and coyotes and so on. So it's just safer not to let him off leash. Right. But obviously, I think a dog still needs to know to come. One of the first things he learned was you have to stay, because if he sees me getting ready to go out but he can't come, that's what I say to him. And because my husband works at home at the moment, because pandemic, etc., if I say you have to stay, I get the real side eye, and he goes off and sits with my husband instead. But he really looks at me like he's annoyed with me when I say it. So that's quite sweet and funny, but also a bit sad. And apart from that, I mean, I've been teaching him sit, and I've just recently been teaching him to roll over. So he knows roly-poly means he has to roll over in one direction. Nice. And he can shake paw now as well, because we've been working on that recently. And that's it for him. And then, okay, I don't know about your cat. One of my cats, shall I say, is definitely not a genius. Oh, is Apricot with you right now?
Yeah, he's a lap cat. 100%.
Oh, yeah. Very nice. So I don't think Harley even knows his name, unfortunately. He's not the brightest of cats. I mean, he knows what he wants and he knows how to get what he wants. What he does know is the word brush. And brush is like a recall cue for him because he loves to be brushed.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So if I say brush, he comes running. And if I haven't brushed him twice in the day, he will actually come and howl at me. And I think he has a different howl when he wants to be brushed compared to when he wants to eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I taught him to do a button, I would have to say brush. What does Apricot know?
He knows his name. Like we say his name in a really weird way. I think he trained us to do that. But so we say his name in this like high squeaky cat way, and then he'll come running. So he does know that. Other than that, like I've taught him to jump through my arms just on a lark. Like that video challenge that was going around.
Yeah.
But I guess this conversation is making me realize how little we rely on sort of verbal cues with our own animals. Like all of our dogs know if, we give them kind of a hand signal if they can't come outside with us. So if I'm going to go out the door and they're budging away at the door and they can't come, I'll give them a hand signal and they won't run through the door like that. They know to wait, but it's not, we don't say words to that. And they know when it's walk time, it's partly like they know when I'm getting close to the end of my work day, it's time for walkies. But also when I go to the fridge and grab my bait bag, they know that it's walk time. So even if I did that right now, they would all start to sort of like activate because they know that it's walk time. So they know a lot of like cues coming from my own behavior or, hand signals. So all of them can sit and lay down with hand signals, but I don't, maybe Soleil has this sit on a cue, but we just don't use words that much. That is just not our habit, I guess.
Well, that's okay. And my cat, Melina, she's the clever cat. She knows she's the clever cat. She also knows she's the one in charge of everybody. She makes sure that we all know what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
She's that kind of cat. She's a tortoiseshell cat. She's very, very chatty. She knows her name and she knows Harley's name and she knows it's not her name, but she comes running anyway if I'm trying to call Harley because she's like, well, there might be treats in it for me too. So she comes anyhow.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's very, very chatty. Yeah. So what words or behaviors, if you're not going to use words to describe them, what behaviors do you think all dogs should know?
I guess comfort with grooming, with required grooming would be, kind of the number one. And I guess that's just on my mind because as you and I were speaking about earlier, I just had a dog who had some grooming stuff and had to go to the vet. And he's like a really special case fearful dog. And I really wish that he had become comfortable in his life with grooming. So I guess like laying down comfortably for having nails done would be, to me, numero uno, because you have to do it every week or two, and many dogs find it so terrifying. And then after that, recalls. I mean, I know this doesn't apply to everybody. So if you're living in a city with a small dog and the dog's just not off leash that much or ever, then this is not nearly as important. But for my life and the life of many of my clients with big kind of like country dog situations, having a really, really solid recall is super, super important. So that's the one where we put, like, if you were going to say you have 200 cubes of cheese, where are those cheese, what behaviors are those cheeses going to be reinforcing over this week? It will be nail clips and recalls for sure.
Yeah, I personally, I would probably put it the other way around and say recall first and then grooming, husbandry things next. But I agree they're really important things for dogs to know. And I think if you've got a dog from a puppy and you've got them used to being groomed as a puppy, then it's so much easier. But if you get an older dog who's never been taught that, it actually can be really quite a difficult thing to teach and to train them to accept. So yeah, definitely that's important. I think even for little dogs, they should know some recall, because you never know when a door's going to accidentally get left open or a gate to your yard is going to accidentally get left open. So you never know when it might be useful, even if you don't give the dog that much freedom and opportunity to run around anyway.
And I think one of the things that I was always surprised about when I taught classes was just how easy it is to train a dog to do a recall if you're doing it right, and how people really just don't have that information, which is not out there, how to train a recall effectively. So we would focus on recalls, and we had this thing where we'd hand out little tins of fish with recall instructions. And one of the things I think at the end of class, people would always be saying was like, holy cow, I can't believe it. Like believe it was nice when I dropped my glasses and the dog started chewing on my, expensive progressives. But just the fact that the dog could recall, like you say, when the door was left open, because they'd done some relatively simple exercises with just really, really good rewards. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And there are so many people who would really prefer to train with kibble for whatever reason. And that's not the way to get a good recall. So yeah, definitely those cubes of cheese or fish or, something really, really good. And one of the things Yeah, one of the things I keep telling people about when I'm talking about my book, WAG, is a piece of research that looked at the reinforcement that dogs will run fastest for. And it compared a piece of sausage to a piece of kibble, and they run faster to get the piece of sausage. And I like that study because I think that's such a useful piece of information to give people. So when
For
they're trying to
sure.
say, oh, no, but my dog should work for kibble, you can, actually say, no, it really has been tested, and actually, no, it's much better to use something that they really, really love. Yeah. What about cats? Have you ever done any training with your cat?
Yeah, we've done a little bit of training. So he's comfortable getting his nails clipped. And I just use padding. He's very, very affectionate lap cat. So I just pay attention to order of events. and that's been good enough for him. But I also did some training. I was going to train him to jump up on a little box and like put his feet up like a lion. And then I was going to get a little chair. Anyway, that didn't happen.
Oh, that would be so cool, though. That would
I
be so
know,
cute.
with one of those little tiny plastic. But anyway, I did train him to jump through my arms once, and that was way easier than I
Cool.
thought. Yeah.
Cool. But now you've told us the other one. I think maybe you'll have to revisit that, perhaps.
Okay. We will
Yeah.
try to make that happen. We will write a training plan. I think I had him jumping up and putting up a little bit, but then I didn't. I guess how would you like how would I prompt? I guess I could free shape that. I'm not sure. I've never free shaped anything with him, so he's not like clicker savvy.
Mm. Yeah. So I taught Melina to sit pretty a few years ago when I was doing the advanced certificate in feline behavior with international cat care, because part of that course, one of the sections is on training cats, and you have to write a training plan. So I made Melina
Okay,
do the
fun.
training plan. So taught her sit pretty, which was fun. But with these two cats, Melina and Harley, I've probably spent more time on trying to teach them to go in their cat carrier than I've done with previous cats, because I have tried to teach previous cats to do it, but that was before I was a dog trainer. So I didn't do it as well or efficiently.
Right.
Having done the Academy for Dog Trainers, obviously I'm a much better trainer than I used to be. So that's been useful for teaching the cats to go in their carriers, which I think is really important, because going to the vet is so much easier then. And actually, Harley had to go to the vet quite recently. And what was sweet, we have two carriers, one for each cat, and they're both the same, but they're out all the time. So Harley went off to the vet in one carrier, and he came home, and then the place he chose to go and recuperate from his horribly exciting morning was the other cat carrier. So I
Oh,
thought
that's
that was
nice.
really nice.
That is great.
Mm.
That really says something too about how comfortable, that he wasn't sort of knocked back after an actual vet visit.
Well, no, I'll be honest, he did have some gabapentin to help him with the vet visit. Because he used to be really, really good at going to the vet, but now every time he goes to the vet, things have to happen to him because he has diabetes, and so he has to have regular blood tests, and he has to have some other checks, and he had an x-ray this time. So yeah, he's not as keen on going to the vet as he used to be, and I think that tells me that I need to do more husbandry training with him to help him with those things.
Right.
Yeah.
It's hard with cats because they don't go for rides. Oh,
Mm,
let's hop in the car. I mean, we
yeah.
don't do that with, maybe if we start now, this, you would know better than me. If we started with kittens, like let's
Yeah.
drive around, would they ever get into that? Would that
Yeah.
be something that they would
I
find intrinsically enjoyable?
yeah, and some vets actually have kitten kindy classes where the kitten goes to the vet and has, takes part in various activities at the vet, and that can help them be more confident as adult cats. But the thing is that Harley used to
Okay.
be good at going to the vet when all he had to do was go there and have the stethoscope applied to him and then get his jabs and then come home. He was quite happy with all of that. But I think also I feel like it's worse because at the moment I can't go in with him because of our vet's
Right.
pandemic protocols, which I completely understand.
Yeah.
But I feel like he's better when I'm there with him. I think it helps. So,
For
yeah.
sure.
And I wondered if you
Okay.
just wanted to say something about the two courses that you've got, because they're awesome.
Sure. So there's two right now. There's two. I've got one in the works for dogs who are demand barkers. So that's in the works. But the two courses that are on offer right now, one is for jumpy, pestery dogs. So for dogs who are sort of joyful and happy, but jump up at the door in greeting or jump up in the home are sort of boisterously playful, and pester you while you eat. So the dog's kind of like go, go, go. So I kind of hope that I run the whole gamut. I offer a lot of training help to train the dogs to do sit and down stays, which are useful behaviors to do instead of the jumping up and pestering. And then it also has a lot of information about how to meet our dog's needs otherwise. So if they've got a lot of go-go juice because they're not getting their needs met, then, I offer what I hope is a bunch of useful suggestions about how to meet dogs' needs. And then I also try to help people overcome the whole, but I can't fit it into my life thing. So we're all busy. It's hard to get into new habits. And a lot of times when we have to meet our dog's needs with walks or, food puzzle toys, it's hard to get into that habit and it can feel a little overwhelming. So I sort of try to address that as well in the course in a way that's, approachable and non-judgmental, because this describes me too,
Well,
so
all of us, I think.
Yeah, we have a dog who has new skills, a new way of greeting people at the door. And then also an easy way for us as humans to change our own behavior. So behavior change for our dogs and humans.
I think that's really important to think about the human side of it as well. And I think for some people with a very jumpy, mouthy, boisterous dog, even though the dog is friendly, it actually can be really quite challenging. So it's great to have some easy tips to make it easy for people to start to change that behavior.
Oh, for sure. And I think also just like as dog pros to recognize that people are going to be extremely frustrated by their animals and that, we don't really get to judge people for that because it is frustrating stuff. So, yeah. And the other class is for adult dogs who need house training. And actually, I'm not going to point any fingers, but I've had dogs who have been tricky to house train. And also house training is a dreary chore a lot of the times. If you're talking about a dog who's tricky to house train, and some dogs are really easy, they seem to just kind of do it themselves. And those are lovely. If you have that, yay, you, but that doesn't describe every adult, especially if they've had a lot of history of going in the house already, and you don't always know that when you get an adult dog. So what I try to do is I've turned it into a game. So you start off at sort of the easiest level, and there's like a printable game piece, game card with pieces, and you have to rearrange them. And then if you get through a certain amount of time without an accident inside your house, then you get a level up, and you get new game pieces, and your dog gets new freedom. So it's the standard house training protocol that we know works. It's been vetted on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dogs. So it's going to work for everybody's dog if they can put in the effort. And then it's just a way to try and really make it into something that's fun instead of, layering a bit of fun on top of the fact that it is a little bit of effort for humans. We have to put the work in if we want the main prize of having a dog who's house trained, which is great and lovely. And even if your dog has been making messes inside for years, you still can house train them, but it takes some elbow grease. So try and make the, as fun as possible, considering it is just going to be some effort. So that's the other course.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's great that people can level up and turn it into a piece of fun, because really when you think about house training, fun is not what you think of. You think of all the messes, really. And the thing is, when you adopt an adult dog, it's actually quite common for them to have some house training lapses at the beginning, even if they were house trained, but of course they haven't necessarily been house trained in their previous home. So it's something that you have to look out for. So that's fantastic. If someone, they want to know more about these courses, where can they go to find out?
They're both just there's a description of each course on my website, and it's just my name, kristibenson.com. So
perfect. And we can put that in the show notes as well. And then I thought towards the end, we're nearing the end of this now, we would each say something about the books that we happen to be reading at the moment. So I'm going to go first with one. I've actually got 3 books lined up. So I'll do one of mine and then you can do yours, and then we'll go to my other ones, because we have a book club. So I have to do the book club book. At the moment, we're reading Dogopolis by Chris Pearson, which is a history. It's called Dogopolis: How Dogs and Humans Made Modern New York, London, and Paris. And to be honest, I think to some extent it's actually about how those cities made dogs and constrained the kinds of lives that dogs have to have. And it's quite sort of academic, but it's also really interesting. It's got a section about rabies. And because it's historical, some of this is from before people actually knew what the cause of rabies was. So that's really interesting because there are people talking about it being caused by hysteria, like being too excited, or maybe it's caused by in women if they are celibate, for example, as one of the ideas that was proposed. So some really odd ideas about what caused rabies, and lots of things about how they thought dogs had something to do with it, but they didn't know if rabies in dogs was the same as what they called hydrophobia, fear of water, in people. So that's interesting. And it's got a section on police dogs and the development of police dogs. And again, there's some, shall we say, interesting ideas that people used to have about dogs. For example, some people thought that they could simply sniff out criminals because criminals must, of course, smell different than other people. So, wow, kind of weird, but it shows how things have changed, and it is actually really interesting to think about how people's views of dogs have changed. And you can also see through the book how they're thinking about dogs actually having emotions and so on as well, and the views of dogs are changing. So it is really interesting, and that's the book club book for this month.
I was just going to say, I kind of love books about cities and dogs. I love that idea. I might go back and I've been watching the discussion of that go by. I haven't actually read that book yet though, but I think it interests me because humans organize themselves into cities. And so our behavior in an urban environment is interesting too, on top of the dog question. So this is the book that I'm trying to read.
Oh, cool.
And it's about wit. It's wit's end, what wit is, how it works, and why we need it. And it's written with such a humongous dose of wit that it's almost unreadable in parts because it's so deeply witty that it's almost too much for me. Like my brain is exploding, but it's a really fun thing to read if you can get into that mode where you just, are finding things fascinating and silly, and you can skip over the parts that you don't necessarily, a lot of references to things that I just don't have a clue, right? I'm like, I know he's referencing something and I can kind of get that there's something secondary going on here, but I just don't know. That's neat. It's about language and people and thinking and communication, and that stuff's fascinating to me. So, and besides that, I'm reading a bunch of like trashy thrillers because that's what I do.
Good. Well, it's okay to share trashy thrillers with us too. Like, they don't have to be smart books. But no,
just pretend I only read smart books.
I like the sound of that because I'm always interested in books about language and linguistics anyway. So I will look out for that one. Thank you. Good. So I've got another book. This is Muggins, which I read recently, and that is Muggins at the top there. And also, this is just published. It's by Grant Hayter Menzies. It's Muggins, The Life and Afterlife of a Canadian Canine War Hero. So this is Muggins, who lived in Victoria. No one actually knows the origins of where Muggins came from, but Muggins used to raise funds for the Red Cross. Yeah, and so he would go around with containers attached to him into which people could put money, and apparently he only liked it if people put coins in there. If people put notes in there, he didn't hear the noise of them going in, and so he wasn't very happy with that, even though of course for the people collecting they would have been more happy. When boats full of soldiers came into Victoria Harbour during the Great War, I think you call it, First World War, he would go on board the boat and go around all the soldiers, and they all liked to see him, and he would raise money there. And also there was some footage of him on a little stand at a kiosk in downtown Victoria, doing sitting up and begging and asking for money, and he was so cute. So that's really interesting to read the history of this dog, and his job basically was to raise money, and we don't have charity dogs in quite that way anymore. So he had a lot of freedom. He could just wander the streets of Victoria on his own, because times were different back then.
Yeah. Victoria, I lived in Victoria for a while, and it was a very dog friendly city when I lived there too, which it wasn't during World War I, but it was a few years ago.
Yeah, we're not that old.
No.
Yeah, so anyway, that's really interesting, and some of the royalties from that go to the BCSPCA, and some of the royalties go to the Red Cross, so that's really nice as well. Cool. So you're supporting a good cause when you buy that. And then my other book, so I wanted to share some fiction. This is fiction. It's not trashy fiction, mind you. It is writers and lovers.
High class fiction?
It is literary fiction. It is actually a really nice book. It says gorgeous on the top. It just is a gorgeous book. It's by Lily King, and it's about someone who wants to be a writer. And all her friends from uni who wanted to be a writer have kind of given up trying and gone into proper jobs and stuff. But she still wants to be a writer, and she's still writing. And so she's still waitressing so that she has time to write. And it's about whether she is going to make it. It's a really nice book. It's actually very well written, and I loved it. So, and writers like reading and writing about writers, I think. But it has a happy ending. I don't mind giving that away. It has a happy ending, so that's good too. So that's what you like to see.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And if we're continuing in the vein of books, I think, doodle do, you were saying something about having some news.
Yeah. So I have a book coming out next year called Purr, The Science of Making Your Cat Happy. And we are almost 6 months out from the publication date. So that means things are starting to happen. And I'm going to be doing a cover reveal and then on my blog on the 3rd of November, I believe. So I'll be able to share the cover with people. And it's a very similar kind of book to WAG, except that it's about cats. So it's about how to provide what cats need in order to have a happier cat. And I'm really looking forward to sharing it with the world. It's quite exciting. And I will say ahead of time, I am going to be asking people to be so kind as to pre-order if they're interested in the book, because pre-orders make such a big difference to authors. Because it helps bookstores know, and it helps Amazon know how many copies to order ahead of time. So it really helps if people are interested in pre-order. So I'll say thank you in advance to anybody who wants to do that. And I really look forward to sharing the cover with you. And
I can't wait to see it.
Yeah,
have you seen it?
Like, I have seen it. I do know what it's like. And I was consulted on it, which is very nice because authors don't always get a choice of what the cover is like. It's up to the publisher to do the cover. But I was consulted and I absolutely loved it. So yeah, it's really nice.
That's great.
Good. So I think that's it for today. So I will say thank you to everybody listening to this recording. So thank you very much for listening and see you next time.
Take care. Bye, Zazie.
Bye. This episode was recorded in November 2021. Thank you for listening to the Positive Posting Conversation. If you liked this episode, please subscribe to the show and write us a review via your podcast app. For the show notes, visit companionanimalpsychology.com. This show was produced by Zazie Todd. The music is Melody from Paris by Studio Le Bousse. See you next time.